Welcome back. President-elect Trump about to inherit a world of problems. Critics of the Obama administration point to a legacy of failed foreign policy so-called agreements that have made us weaker on the world stage. Here to break them down for us this morning, just a few of them, is Fox News contributor Gillian Turner. She was part of the White House National Security Council staff under both Presidents George W. Bush and President Obama. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So you've seen deals like this on both sides of the aisle, but under this administration, there's been some very critical ones that are going to have implications going forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few people out there you're going to find, even supporters of President Obama, who are going to tell you that foreign policy has been his strength and that his legacy is going to be really solid there. There's a lot of questions open up during the course of his administration that are going to have to be answered.
A lot of chaos, a lot of open questions, as you said. One of those is the Iranian nuclear deal, which Trump has said he's going to tear apart or readjust. What are the implications of that agreement?
Well, you know, it's interesting because this deal obviously hasn't failed yet. It's still active right now. But I kind of view it's active. I view it as a fail for the American people and even for the Iranian people, who this was billed as being great for. You know, there was this whole groundswell of support from the Iranian citizens for this because this was going to open up their economy. It was going to help them grow their national economy. And the reality is that 10 years from now, if you check back with them, most of them are not going to have significantly better lives. They're not going to have more money. And that's going to be one of the major tragedies to come from this deal that no one's talking about.
The strategitic imperative for us was preventing nuclear
Iran. Right. And then there's the whole reason it's bad for us. And it's even worse for us because I think part of what we gave up here when we sat down to the table just to negotiate here without any preconditions was the leverage we had over the Rouhani regime. And that's something that's going to hurt us in the long term.
Absolutely. All right, the Syrian red line, a lot of tough rhetoric that never materialized, and chaos, humanitarian disaster. What are the implications of that?
And people will push back on us and say, you know, it wasn't really an agreement. There was nothing signed. There was nothing binding. But I would argue that something the President of the United States commits to the international community is binding, and there's an obligation for him to really account for what has gone down since he reneged on that promise.
Why does he continue to defend that decision and say, hey, I know I didn't intervene the way that I said I would, but that was the right call?
I think part of the reason is because nobody wants the United States to sort of take the fall for the ensuing civil war that we've seen over the last 4 years, which has had atrocious humanitarian consequences, as well as the refugee crisis that's ensued. It's now gone global.
Not to mention ISIS.
We don't really want to sign up for the buck on that one. But I think that had he not reneged on this, some of this could have been potentially mitigated.
It was such a moment where America's prestige was diminished because we said something and they didn't stand up to it.
An ally. We sort of disappointed a whole slew of allies that have never really gotten over it.
Absolutely. All right, the Russian New START treaty.
So this is a treaty that was signed between the United States and Russia in 2010 when there was a lot of excitement and hope about the sort of President Obama. You know, this was like everything. And the reality is that every new administration does get a clean slate. They get to decide how they're going to deal with our allies and our adversaries around the globe. Many thought that President Obama and President Putin were going to have a working relationship, but I hold this up as a failed agreement in the sense that it kind of, there was all this hype, and we now look back 8 years later, or 6 to 7 years later, and we see how far the relationship has really deteriorated. We can't even agree on how to fight common adversaries in ISIS.
You're right. It's become an adversarial relationship where there was promise. All right, Trans-Pacific Partnership.
So last one is the TPP. This is counted as a failure because it's wilting on the vine, is basically what's come out of it.
And the President-elect has come out.
It was like a lot of hope but no chance for this to kind of happen, and now the President put a whole lot of personal capital into it. It's not going to come to be, and so it's just a whole lot of wasted energy. And
Gillian Turner, thanks a lot for your expertise. And you're going to be with us all week, right?
I will.
All right, more to come on this then. And plenty of security threats to come that will come.